So hello and welcome to the 25th episode of the Boar Hat Tavern Podcast. A podcast all about the seven deadly sins Grand Cross. One of these times I'm going to say all this without messing it up. Today on the show, we've got a bunch of great topics we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about Summer Merlin and Lizhawk, which just dropped today on Global as part of the second part of the Summer Beachy Festival, or whatever you want to call it. We're going to be talking about Festival Margaret / Ludo. Again, I still don't know what to call him / her. But he got, or she got a buff on JP, which turned her from a balanced unit to a broken unit. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit. We also got an announcement today that Ungeared Guild Wars is coming to Global. It's going to start next week, and we're all kind of excited about that. So we're going to talk about that a little bit because we've all participated in Geared Guild Wars for many months, and we want to share what our experiences are and how we think this might translate into Ungeared Guild Wars for the public, because it's going to be a type that's open to everybody. And then we're going to finish off the show, not with a game. We decided to scrap the game this week because we want to do a top 10 list instead, and we figured that this is a lot of content we're going to get through. We're going to do a top 10 units for Guild Wars list, which I curated. I guess it was my turn to do a top 10 list this time. I put Sandyy and Novage on the spot last couple times we did these. So I'm your host, Daz, and I'm joined today by the co-hosts of the podcast, Sandyy and Novage. Again, thanks as always for doing the show with us, guys.
Always a pleasure. It's always something I look forward to every week.
It really is. But
every other week.
Well, hey, this is 2 weeks in a row now, so we're actually doing a really good job. This is the first time we haven't been a bi-weekly podcast, quote unquote, for a while. But I don't know, Sandyy, is this going to change? Because I hear you got a vacation coming up, don't you? A well-deserved one.
Yeah. So again, so funny. I know we're on a streak right now, and I have to ruin that. Next week, we're going to have to skip the podcast. I finally get to use some vacation hours. No, I will not be going to the beach, but I'm really, really looking forward to it, just to kind of get away. Going somewhere kind of locally. You know, I'm in California, so I'm going to make my way down south. And as you guys know, I mean, I do events all the time, but this time I'm actually going to be able to enjoy a wedding instead of executing one. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's pretty exciting. I'm pretty jealous. I had my vacation for the summer already, so now I'm in the dog days of summer, just kind of slogging through work. No, are you going to take any vacation time, or are you just going to work through it all?
No, I'm still working through it all. Kids start school this week, starting tomorrow, so getting back to that normal routine of they're in session actually at the school now, so instead of virtually doing their classroom, which was also a challenge in itself. But yep, no vacation for me.
That's crazy. For me, my kids start school in like a month from now. I always thought it was crazy. I'm not sure if it's all states, but I know a lot of the states have school start significantly earlier than we do up here in Canada. I guess because our seasons are a little bit different than yours. Maybe that's part of the reason. Who knows? Anyways, before we start the show, there's one thing I wanted to point out. Give a bit of a shout out to a former guildmate, Asami, and one of his guildmates, Larry. They're actually from Vanya Ale, but what they're doing is they've put together a nice initiative, which I want to kind of promote a little bit if I can. They're putting together a community Discord server with a goal of trying to help people find guilds. I know it's really difficult because I do a lot of recruiting for our guild for people to find guilds that match them really well. And it's also hard as a recruiter to find people that are good matches for your guild. So Asami and Larry and a bunch of other people, but they're putting together this Discord server with the goal of trying to help people find those matches. So if you're looking for a new guild, even if you just want to hang out in a great community, check out the link that we're going to put in the description of this video, of the audio, and join their community and check it out because it's a great one. And I know that they're working on some really cool tools to help find guilds for guildless people as well. So check that out, again, in the link in the description. But that being said, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the show. So starting with our first character that got released, probably the more exciting of the two, but I guess that's up for debate, and that's something we're going to be doing right now. And that is Beach Girl Truth Seeker Merlin. She's a blue unit. She looks pretty good. Is she good? I don't know. Let's see what her kit is, and then we'll discuss it. Her passive's called Making a Sandcastle. And it's a really cool passive. When she uses 2 skills on an allied turn, I don't know why you do skills on the enemy turn, but whatever, it disables attack skills of all enemies for 1 turn. When you use 3 skills on your own turn, you can prevent ultimate move gauge from filling up for all enemies for 2 turns. That's pretty crazy. Cool, interesting passive. We'll be talking about that a bit more in a second. Her first skill is called Summer Rocket. It inflicts flood damage equal to 200 to 500% of attack on 1 enemy. And flood, for those who might not know what that card text does, it does bonus damage based on percent HP remaining. So the more HP that you have, the like percentage wise, the more damage you'll do. Very, very similar. Actually, it's the exact same card that the one has on his flood card, his smash card, not his punch card, his big smash card. That's what I call him. I don't know. And then her second skill is called Sandcastle. Inflicts damage equal to 180% of attack on all enemies and depletes 2 ultimate move gauge orbs at the end of the enemy's turn for 2 turns. That's on gold. But on bronze, it depletes as well. It's the exact same move as Green Gother's Pumpkin Bombs, which if you've played this game for even a day, you've seen Pumpkin Bombs in PvP, I am sure. And her ultimate move decreases HP stats of all enemies by 30% for 2 turns and inflicts damage equal to 400 to 600%, again, depending on how many dupes you have, of attack on 1 enemy. And at 6/6, the debuff, the HP-related stats debuff, lasts for 3 turns instead of 2. Yeah, nice little boost if you happen to have her 6/6, but definitely not mandatory. So Sandyy, she's pretty cool. She's someone you want to take on vacation with you, or are you going to leave her where she is?
Honestly, she's pretty cool. I mean, like, her passive kind of reminds me a little bit of Blue Dairy. Just because, like Blue Dairy, if you attack her twice, right, you get your ultimate move disabled. But here, like Merlin, if you use 2 cards, you can attack disable. And I definitely know that, like, I've gone up against Red Gothers, and you don't see those on the field so often. So that attack disable honestly comes in handy against the T1s, against, like the Bonds and other people, because nobody's bringing healers anymore. So I think currently for the meta, the PvP meta right now, she could be, if you've pulled her and you've got dupes, she could be very viable, just because there's no cleanse on the field. I might be speaking too soon and people might be bringing in, your red Eastons and, maybe Blue King will come back. Who knows?
Yeah, really the only cleanser you ever see these days seems to be Red Easton on the occasional Bond team, but even that's not super popular. That being said, 2 weeks from now, Margaret's coming on the scene and she's got a cleanse card. So maybe that'll change some of the effectiveness of these since we've got cleanses coming back. One thing that I think is pretty cool about her is usually when you see a character with a support kit like this, like you're talking about attack disables, you're talking about alt drain, you're talking about alt sealing. She also has a pretty high damage card too. T1 flood card, that does a lot of damage. And this one hits pretty hard as well. The only downside of flood cards, though, is that when you're low health, the damage output really drops off. At least T1 has his second punch card to work on, which isn't affected by his health. So he can use that to get a little bit of lifesteal, and then he can use the flood card on the same turn after you've lifesteal a little bit back to hit even harder. But Merlin doesn't have that luxury because Pumpkin Bombs, or her version of it, doesn't do a ton of damage. So you're not going to be lifestealing a ton back. So unless you have a healer, which Sandyy before said we already don't really bring healers into PvP, there's generally no room for it. If you don't go first and she loses a lot of health on turn 1, she better not be your only DPS unit because she won't be doing a ton of it.
I think she takes investment, and I think, new units that come out, and if you want to utilize them in PvP. I don't like the fact that she has like new time limited cosmetics. So if you're not going to purchase it and you're not going to whale out right away, that's not coming back, I don't know. I don't think I'll be pulling for her. What about you, Dad?
It's tough. Like if she shared cosmetics with the other Merlin, it would be a lot more tempting to be able to pull on her. But the fact that you've got these time limited cosmetics that cost, dollars. Maybe later you can get them for gems or something. But to be really viable in PvP, you need a lot of investment in any character, and that means you're going to need the cosmetics. So this is a tough pill to swallow, especially for anyone who's not spending money, or even not spending a lot of money on the game, trying to get this unit, say like, high alt level, or all the cosmetics, all that investment. That's a lot of upfront. You only have a couple weeks to just make that decision to get all those while the banner's around. Because as soon as that's done, the cosmetics are gone, the character's gone, and who knows how long it will be before we ever see them again.
Yeah. I mean, it gets kind of confusing where she can't share the cosmetics with the other Merlins, but she can share the UR gear. So it's like, what?
Well, hey, I guess that's a good thing. I guess it's kind of like the new Ludociel / Margaret. Like, you can still use Ludociel's UR gear on it, even though they've got a different set of cosmetics. Or like the same thing with like Valenti versus MK2 Valenti. So at least they haven't totally screwed us, and by they I mean Netmarble, on like the UR sharing of gear, except for Danafor Liz. For some odd reason, she's like the one lone exception to the rule. So if you do happen to pull her, because we know we do all get free pulls on this banner, what kind of gear are you going to use on her? Because she's in kind of a strange spot. She's a damage dealer with her flood card, but she's also utility with her kit.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't pulled her yet, Daz, but if I do, I mean, like with any typical Merlin, right? Any gear, depending on how you want to use her, right? She is a stall unit, but then again, like you said, that flood card, attack defense, that's what I've got on my other Merlins. But maybe attack crit, for crit to be reliable, you're probably going to have to put like Ludo on the field with her, or, someone. But HP defense, attack defense, those kits are not going to fail you. And they're all perfectly fine with her. I guess depending on the dupes too, if you've got a 6/6 dupe, then definitely I recommend like attack defense. But, if you got like 3, 2, or 3, then maybe survivability would be the route that you want to go with that HP defense or HP crit. Just because, again, like she's not like your main DPS, right? But you also want that flood card to be able to do some damage and then, stall until someone gets ult.
Yeah, I think my recommendation, if anyone's looking for a recommendation, is just to use whatever UR gear for Merlin you happen to have, because you probably already have a set, maybe 2 sets for Merlin already, right? Maybe you've got Baby Merlin or Lolly Merlin, however you want to call her, or even just good old Green Merlin. A lot of people had HP def sets for her too. I'd just throw whatever you have on and see how it goes. And if you run into problems, you're like, oh man, that attack that damage just isn't as much as I needed. Then hey, change your HP set to an attack set and roll with that. But again, I if I had to bring her onto the field, I'm kind of mixed. I think it depends what team you bring her on with. Like if she's a primary DPS, I think you have to go almost attack defense or attack crit. I guess you can go either way. But personally, when looking at PvP teams, I think I'd look at her as a secondary DPS unit. As we mentioned before, relying on a flood card for most of your DPS, and like her ultimate, yeah, I guess it does a little bit of damage, but it's not like you're not killing a unit or two with it, right? You need someone else to help her out. So I think if I was crafting a team, I'd probably put her on a team, honestly, with maybe the one, right? Just double flood card or something else to get some damage output, and use her as a secondary DPS option. And I think that's a fine way to go about it. Maybe the one and Ludociel would be a good combination. It's tough. And whenever you're crafting a PvP team, it can be tough to try and figure out who to take out to put that person in. Because if you're going, say, like T1, Merlin and Ludociel, if you don't go first, you're kind of dead. Like it's almost game over right away, because someone's going to probably die on turn 1, if not turn 1, turn 2, because they don't have Goddess Liz protection, or you don't have a Goddess Liz shield to throw up. You don't have a Goddess Liz. Really, that's the bottom line. And she's just so important, or having some way to make sure you can survive a hard-hitting turn 1 is something that the team would be lacking. And if you put a Goddess Liz in there, you got Goddess Liz, say you got Merlin, then who are you going to use for the third? Yeah, I guess you could put in like another DPS unit in, but you're not going to be hitting as many of those crits, because you can't use Gother because she's an unknown unit. I mean, I guess you could use Gother, but his passive wouldn't be useful, at least the green version. So yeah, really carefully plan what you're doing here. And I think it's not the easiest way to go about it. And one of the reasons that she probably isn't a must summon unit. She's not a broken unit. She's just a balanced unit.
Yeah. I mean, you can be super annoying and use red Gother instead and just attack disable.
Just in case you have the opportunity to use Merlin's attack disable, we got Gother's attack disable to back out on.
Yeah, and his passive, might be able to stack that 5 times if he doesn't get attacked, right?
That's true.
Oh.
That's true. Just keep attack disabling those bonds, and they can't do much until they get ult, and then you're kind of screwed. So
that's true. Well, you can take away ult, right, with the ultimate gauge removal.
That's
the pumpkin
true.
bonds, right?
So
Rank up. I don't know.
Maybe we're on to something. And you can tell Netmarble. I think they're regretting their decision of making bonds so strong, because we've had like a series of blue units and we've got more blue units coming out, just in an attempt to somehow counter this situation. I think we've probably beaten we've probably beaten poor Merlin to death with a stick, but I don't know if I should be saying that on air. But anyways, I think we're going to move on to the next character. Summer Vibes Lizhawk. And you know what, Novage, I promise I'm going to go to you first on this one, so you can give us as much, unabridged advice on her as you'd like. But Summer Vibes Lizhawk, she's not a blue unit, she's a red unit. And she's a pretty cool one too. And I gotta say, it makes it really tempting to pull on these banners sometimes when you got interesting units. Her passive is what makes her her. It's called Group Travel. Decreases the damage allies take from AoE attacks by 10% for each hero of the goddess race in the battle. And that counts on both sides of the battle, so your side or the opponent's. You also decrease the damage allies take from single target attacks by 10% for each hero of the unknown race in battle. And that, again, is on both sides of the table as well. Skill 1 is called Rolling Ham Attack. It inflicts damage equal to 10 to 250% of attack on all enemies. Decreases skill ranks. And on gold, it also depletes the ultimate move gauge based on the number of skill rank decreases. This is similar, but not exactly the same as SR Green Gother, which I know everybody uses, SR Green Gother. He's got a skill rank down card too. I use him in Training Cave, so some other people might as well. Skill 2 is called Sandcastle. Decreases the attack-related stats of all enemies by 20 to 40% for 2 to 3 turns, depending on the rank of the card. This is kind of like a strong version of Valenti's AoE attack down card. Valenti's AoE attack down card doesn't do anything on bronze. This one still gives you attack related stats down on bronze. So it's buffed up version of it. And then her ultimate is the same as the other Lizhawk ultimates. Inflicts charge damage equal to 700 to 1050% attack on one enemy. So it's a pretty strong ult. And it has actually combined attack if you toss one of your Tavern Meliodases on there to bring it up to 1200% on 6/6. So it can be pretty strong. So Novage, now that you're back, and now that we haven't shared our thoughts on it, so you don't have to worry about duplicating anyone, what are your thoughts on Summer Vibes Lizhawk?
I think of the two, she's probably not as cool as Merlin. But I have seen some people use her in videos and different combinations, and it's kind of nice, her being not the favorite in the banner, to show that she does have some capabilities. I've seen her being, she was paired up with Tarmiel, and she was paired up with Green Guild Thunder. And, when you come across Angel teams or unknown teams, you kind of see that damage mitigation kick in from the passive of Guild Thunder, Tarmiel's stance. And in a sense, it's funny to see, it's fun to see some of these big power moves get whittled down to low damage. But the challenge though in itself is being able to produce damage back. Green Guild Thunder is an area damage move, and he does do a buff card, but it's interesting. It's more of I think it's more of a gimmick, fun to kind of play around with, but I don't see it being a very major team or her being a major part of meta teams out there. But that's just my 2 cents. I mean, it's fun probably to run around and see how low you get damage.
Well, Novage gave his 2 cents. Sandy, do you want to try and give your 4 cents to one of them?
Yeah, I'll put in a donation. I guess it's kind of like they're like tank stall units. This banner, what I feel like, and for her, it's just she has a strong ult, but it's not really gonna like wipe a team. You know, it's just taking one person out. And I feel like when you use a support unit like this, she's more made for like PvE content versus like PvP, unless you really put in that investment and you got to have a DPS, right? So I think she's more like maybe for Brawl, because we see a lot of like Angel teams. We see, you know, a certain team builds on Brawl. So maybe that could work. And I could see her maybe going into Guild Wars, but I don't think she's like a meta unit that you can just kind of place everywhere. I might be speaking too soon, you know. Having one dupe of her is good enough, because I mean, Margaret is set to come out. And, you know, Margaret, Tarmiel, and, you know, this Lizhawk might be the next team, especially, you know, I know we're going to talk about it, Daz, but Margaret's now broken. So now you got the damage mitigation. You also have the attack up, depending on the players on the field. And then you've got Tarmiel, you know, with his defense down. I think that that's going to be a very solid team. But she's just not going to be viable right now. So it's more like future units.
We're talking about this a little bit off camera, and one spot that me and Sandy were mentioning that she may be actually really good in is Ungeared Guild Wars. In Ungeared Guild Wars, and we're going to talk about Ungeared Guild Wars shortly as well, as an attacking unit or an attacking team, you tend to go into defenses which are a lot stronger than the attackers, because the defense side actually has associates, which are allowed, and the attacking team isn't allowed associates. And then the defense team also has these like different buffs that they get. I'm not getting into the specifics, but they get buffs that make them stronger. So generally, you're going in very underpowered against a stronger opponent. And one of the biggest problems is that you just can't get enough damage output before they just start to, like, you know, they put all this pressure on you being on the defense team. You might even lose a unit first turn, and all this damage that comes into you can be potentially mitigated by this Lizhawk, and even maybe paired with a Margaret. If you're taking her, Lizhawk, with a few goddess units, and you're going against a team which is maybe full of unknown units, like maybe your Merlin, Amelia, you know, Rem, you could potentially take almost zero damage. Well, not zero damage, but like 40% less damage from AoEs and from single targets, because there's 4 people on this field on each side. That's a lot of units that'll be going towards stacking her passive. Couple that with Margaret's buff, which reduces damage taken, you can actually potentially survive against teams that you had no business surviving against going into a Guild Wars matchup. So I could see this potentially being a good use for her, kind of as a niche character in Ungeared Guild Wars. But that being said, none of us have experience on Ungeared Guild Wars. So this is more of just speculation on our part. But yeah, she's that tanky stall team. Like, I know, like, you've probably seen in PvP that Esterosa, Tarmiel, Chandler kind of combination, maybe with a Gother. This is a place where you might be able to slot in her as well. Maybe not with those units, but that kind of idea where you just stall out, make it so the other team can do next to no damage until you have your win condition. And I think it's important to consider this too, because Sandy was mentioning, like, her ult isn't going to wipe the team for you. You need to have a win condition whenever you're going into PvP, some way that you know you're going to win, right? Like if you have a team with Amelia, you know, like, okay, Amelia ult, I get that, I win. Lost Man, I mean, he's not in the meta anymore, but when you had him, you get to his ult, you win, right? T1, you get a couple gold cards or his ultimate, you're probably going to win. You got to think what the win condition is on these stall teams, because if you don't have damage output, yeah, you might live forever, but that's not going to be any fun. You're just going to be sitting there for ages in a PvP match, driving the other person mental. So Tarmiel's got a strong ult. Her ult's okay, but you need to think where that damage is going to come from. How are you going to kill those units? How are you going to proc Goddess Liz's passive to proc that revive, right? These are things you need to think about when you're crafting PvP squads. And like Sandy said, I'm not sure if this Lizhawk is going to find an easy place, at least not into the meta. Okay, let's talk about Festival Ludo / Margaret. We've kind of alluded to it already, but he/she, I'm just gonna call him a he because I guess Ludociel is the person who's inside of the vessel of Margaret. He got a buff, and we talked about Ludociel/Margaret in a previous show, and I think we generally said, it's a decent unit, but nothing crazy. But they added some stuff that potentially tipped the scale to make it a little bit on the broken side. It seems that Netmarble thought, okay, they got a little embarrassed when they were showcasing it. The unit didn't do very well against the Bond team they were showcasing it against. And people just generally weren't very impressed with the unit. Probably wasn't a lot of people pulling on the banners, at least not as much as Netmarble thought. So they're like, hey, you know what we need to do? We need to buff this unit as quickly as possible, get more people to spend money on the banner. And that seems to be exactly what they did. And I'm sure that's kind of the result of what happened here. So what she got was her AoE buff card, which previously decreased damage taken from type advantage units and gave more damage when attacking type disadvantaged units. It got a big buff. It just decreases damage taken from any unit and increases damage given to any unit. So instead of, a third of the time doing extra damage or taking less damage, it's just 100% of the time. And if that wasn't enough, which it probably would have been, they also gave it a cleanse. So they're going to be cleansing anything that's on you that should, debuffs are fairly common. So it's a pretty handy thing to have a cleanse on a really powerful buff card. And if that wasn't enough, which it probably was already too much, they actually increased her ultimate. They buffed her ultimate as well. This is only for if you have her 6/6. Most people probably won't, but if you end up getting her 6/6, it blocks all skill effects and reduces ult damage of all units for 2 turns, as well as smashing into them. So when I say blocking all skill effects, that's the Chandler skill block card, the MK2 Valenti skill block card, which negates a lot of potential cards from the other team. So this seems pretty broken to me. I don't know what you guys think about it.
I think that they really made her now from underperforming to overpowered. It reminds me of the episode a few episodes ago when Beats was here and he was saying, he was saving up his gems for, I don't even know what to call her. Mudo, Largaret. Anyways, but yeah, now it's kind of like, you got to go all in. She is a must summon. And, when her banner comes, she's probably going to be one of the strongest units in the game, if you use her correctly and depending on the dupes that you get. And her gold buff, just because of that, advantage and the buff that she got, you basically on a gold, you're going to take no damage. So going back, right, Daz, how we talked about having the Lizhawk and the Tarmiel, you're just going to be like an undead team basically. And Margaret, she's pretty good on DPS as well. Her attack skills are not to be taken. I know we talk about her passive, but her attack can also be DPS as well.
It's one of those things that Margaret, you've got a really strong buff card. You've got a really strong attack card. Her passive just makes other units stronger as well by giving them stats buffs. She really has the whole package, not to mention her ultimate, especially if 6/6. Yeah, okay, maybe it doesn't do a ton more damage. You're not doubling the damage for 6/6ing her that you get out of a Bond. But blocking all skill effects of all units for 2 turns, that's super strong. If they don't have a cleanse, you're basically putting them out of commission for 2 turns. So if you can get that ult off Festival Margaret, yeah, that's your win condition right there almost. And she's going to have to change the way that people think about attacking PvP, because having all those buffs, not being able to do damage, you got to figure out some way to crack that cookie. And it's not an easy cookie to crack. One cookie she's good at cracking, though, is actually Bond teams in a lot of ways. And it just, again, always depends on who you kind of pair her with. But just putting up those buffs, you're going to be mitigating so much damage against the Bonds out there, the Bonds of the world. And it's like she's also got a grace too. It's like you keep remembering all these things that she has, but she also has the grace where her attack gets insanely strong when there's a lot of buffs on the other team, and a lot of the meta teams kind of rely on buffs. Not only other Margarets, which are going to have these buffs, but also the Bond teams have a lot of buffs. Assault Meliodas teams, if you happen to come across them, if they come back into the meta, they have a lot of buffs as well. So Festival Ludo / Margaret, and potentially the next festival unit, which apparently is coming out next week too on JP. We've got a lot of summoning in our future, and it's kind of unfortunate and it's really tough, especially with people who are free to play or even light spenders, having to swallow a 900 gem spend and then potentially 2 weeks later having to do it again. I mean, I'm going to reserve judgment until I see what the next banner is, because I have a funny feeling like they kind of worded things strange. They said it's another festival. I feel like maybe it's like part 2 of the current festival. Maybe it's only a 600 gem banner, but still, we got 600 gems on Merlin, 900 gems here, and then another 600 gems potentially or more a couple weeks later. That's a lot of pull fatigue, and I think that's going to be a big issue with the player base.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, can you do like, when during pay periods, that way I can start swiping. But yeah, I just think she's really going to be broken, and it's going to be, that cleanse. I just think adding that cleanse is just, my goodness, like how do you go around this Mudo Margaret person?
It's tough. And next show, we're 100% going to be covering her and talking about all the ways that she's broken and disrupting the meta and everything. But she's definitely doing that on JP right now. A couple more a couple more topics. We're done with the units. A couple more topics we're going to talk about. The first being Ungeared Guild Wars. And this is something that they've been talking about, at least on JP, for ages. It was released in the dev notes, I think like back in February, that they're going to be releasing Ungeared Guild Wars for everybody. Because we all know that Guild Wars is content that's exclusively locked to the tryhard tryhard sweats of the game, only available to the top 50-ish guilds on global, which is a very small select group. And myself and Sandy, we both have the great privilege to be involved in Guild Wars for, I can't remember how many seasons. If you watched last show, it was one of our trivia questions, but we've had a great time of it. And to be honest with you, it's one of the big reasons I enjoy the game is playing Guild Wars content. And I am so excited that other people get to try this out. Anyone who's in a guild with more than 20 active people can participate in this. And granted, it's not the exact same thing as Guild Wars, but it is fairly similar in a lot of aspects. They got a lot of flack on the way that it runs on JP, but this is a beta mode and hopefully it will change. Guild Wars, when it came to global, actually changed from how it initially was on JP. Not a ton, but it did change, and hopefully Netmarble will take the feedback that they get from both JP and global for Ungeared Guild Wars and make it better. Are you excited for Ungeared Guild Wars? Because I know not everybody is.
There's pros and cons, right? For one, I'm glad we don't have to push Guild Boss. But two, I think, it's going to start early next week, and we get one battle next week and then another battle the week after. So that's already like half the month, right? It really, really is an odd format, from us going from geared Guild Wars to now ungeared. I think it's a great opportunity, definitely, for other guilds who haven't had the chance to kind of unlock this feature. And I guess it's kind of like wetting their feet into if maybe they're going to want to be a try-hard guild that's going to push the guild boss to participate in geared Guild Wars. It's very similar, right? It's 4-on-4, kind of like if you've done Brawl, your guild against another guild, tower against tower. I'm kind of indifferent to it, but I know a lot of people out there are, not looking forward to it, maybe because it's just the rewards aren't quite there.
Yeah, one of the great things about Guild Wars that I really enjoy is that it gave me the opportunity to interact a lot more with my guild. Before Guild Wars started, we've got a Discord community and we chat a little bit, but I feel like we really got to know each other a lot better in leading up to preparation for Guild Wars, coordinating while we were participating in Guild Wars. And even that downtime in between Guild Wars, just trying to talk about, test out, try different things for the next season of Guild Wars. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity for other guilds to be able to go through the same experience for those that haven't had that opportunity to grow and foster their guild family and their guild community by trying to, come together in this time of strife when they've got to battle another guild. But yeah, it's really cool content. We're not going to go into like the format of it too much, just because it is one of those things that not only are we not 100% sure on how it works, there's not a lot of information about it, but it's one of those hard things to explain. You almost have to try it out. And if your guild's kind of like on the fence about it, I'd say like, what, just do it. Get those 20 people to set their defenses or whatever's required to participate and get it going. Like even if half of them, if you've got a guild that's like less active and half of them aren't going to do anything, like it's still a good exercise. You get some rewards as well. Then the rewards aren't like anything you'd, to write home about, but it's still pretty interesting. And you get some gems, you get some knighthood coins, you get some anvils and pendants out of it. So, hey, why not? New format, new fun. Okay. So we do have Novage back for our top 10 list. And that's the most important thing of the day. It's a list curated by me, but I'd love to see what these two Guild Wars vets have to say about this list. And hopefully we can keep Novage on the line for the whole thing. So just a little bit about this list. We're just doing a top 10 list, but this is kind of for Geared Guild Wars, but it's hopefully translates over to Ungeared Guild Wars as well. Again, we don't have any experience in Ungeared Guild Wars because it's not available yet on global, but we do have a lot of experience in the Geared Guild Wars side of things. So hopefully this will be fairly accurate. So top 10 units for Guild Wars by Daz. And we'll start with number 10. Number 10 is Tarmiel. So what do you think about having Tarmiel on 10th list? My argument for Tarmiel, a lot of Guild Wars, and a lot of people probably wouldn't know this, is that on defense, one of the most important things is to have units that help you amplify your damage. And Tarmiel does that in spades. A lot of people don't realize his passive. Yes, this is passive. I was going to say it was maybe his grace, but it's his passive reduces the HP of the whole enemy team by his defense. So it's almost like you're not knocking everyone down a peg. And Tarmiel is the cornerstone of a lot of Guild Wars teams, particularly Pierce or AoE type teams. So what do you guys think of Tarmiel at number 10?
Well, I think he belongs there, honestly, just because that damage mitigation, for one of his cards is damage mitigation, which is that little spiral shield. But having the opponent's HP, go down by his defense, and if you've invested in him, even if it's like geared, which is definitely takes investment, but ungeared as well, if you've gotten his cosmetics, fully maxed out, he really is a support unit, and if you've got that AoE, whether that's on Pierce or if you put it on an Angel team, basically you just got to pray to survive the first round if you see a Tarmiel on the other team that has AoE, right? And yeah, I think he definitely belongs more so on defense versus an attack team.
Yeah, but we have seen guilds use him on attack successfully as well. So I guess he has a place pretty much anywhere, but mostly you generally see him on defense. Novage, are you still with us? Is I think what everyone wants to
try. Can you guys hear me?
We can, and it seems that you're not delayed or robot-y or anything, so I guess we can continue along. Is there anything you want to say about Tarmiel before we move on to the next one?
No, he's a great unit. I think offense or defense, he removes orbs, and his stance decreases damage taken. So either way, however you use him, he's definitely worth in the top 10.
Definitely. I even forgot about his Ultrain too, which is really important in Guild Wars as well. Okay, let's go on to number 9. His partner in crime, Sariel. Sariel is a hard-hitting red DPS unit, probably the hardest hitting single target DPS unit in the game, and his AoE does work. when you're talking about Guild Wars, almost every team has on defense or even on offense at least one really hard-hitting DPS unit, and Sariel is the cornerstone of many of those teams, especially those that are designed to take care of one of the most annoying units to deal with on attack, which is Assault Mode Meliodas. So, what do you think of my pick for number 9, Novage?
He's a great unit. You're right. I've actually invested a lot in him, so I use him on my defense, and I kind of hope he would have been a little bit higher on the list, but definitely is good to be on the top 10.
Yeah, his single target card and his AoE, especially if he uses them both on turn 1, that's probably one dead unit on the attacking squad before they even get a chance to go, which is very powerful to have on your defense whenever you're setting up defense.
And however you pair him with other teammates that may boost his attack or lower the attacking team's defense, obviously will just help him kind of just ensure that he's taking someone down, at least in turn 1, or multiple units down with his AoE.
Definitely. Thoughts, Sandy?
Yeah, I thought he would be, maybe mid on your list. No shame. That's your list. I know I got a lot of pushback from my Milim, so I'm not going to go there. But I think that he is such a great unit, honestly, just because that single target hits really hard and that AoE, but also at the same time, we forget about his passive, which is, or his grace, sorry, that could really come in handy too. So I think that he definitely is a good unit. He's eluded me. I only have 1/6, so for those of you who are lucky with that 6/6 Sariel, his ult also hits really, really hard as well. That single target ult.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people might be surprised that Tarmiel and Sariel are so low on this list, but I think once you see the next 8, you might be like, okay, well, maybe Daz is on to something. So number 8 is actually Baby or Lolly Merlin. Now, Merlin is very similar to Sariel in a lot of ways, but kind of like the green version. I put her up a little bit higher because of 2 reasons. She's got her AoE card is an infect card. When you're going in on an attack against a Merlin, when she infects you and you're relying on that lifesteal with a Lost Vein Meliodas or an Assault Meliodas, it can ruin your day. And then also she's got that spike card, which is really powerful. So, and then again, she is a little bit tankier in that she takes at least 3 hits to get down from 100% health, which can be tough and annoying to deal with as well. Whereas Sariel, you can one-tap him if you've got the right card. Baby Merlin at number 8. Sandy, what do you think?
Okay. Now I see where you're going, Des. She's super annoying with that. I think if anything, that infect card on defense, just because you're looking at the lifesteal and just, you can't, even T1 can't mitigate that unless, you got to survive 3 turns for his immunity buff to kick in. Her ult is an AoE ult, and also, giving you the perfect cube all around. So she's a great unit, I think that definitely she belongs on number 8.
So I have the ordering right so far, at least for these 3, Novage, in their order. You still with me with Merlin being a little bit above Sariel?
I see where your challenge is. You probably laid out all these units 10, and then you're like placing them in order. You're like, well, actually, this one's probably a little bit more useful than this one, and kind of knocks some of them down. I see. I mean, I feel that Merlin, definitely those teams you come across, pretty annoying. I think we've all kind of dealt with Sariel and Tarmiel teams for a while now, but Baby Merlin came out a little bit later. I recently was able to use some of my festival coins to get her 6/6, so I was happy about that. Have her on my defense team. I probably need to do a little bit more work, but I think one of her passive about the percentage of health of how much your max damage she could take. So she could be a little annoying if she life steals enough back to kind of take out your team, especially with infect left on your attackers.
Oh, that infect card, it's the bane of my existence sometimes. Okay, going on number 7, I've got Bon. That's Purgatory Bon, for those wondering. Purgatory Bon hasn't been out for too long, but he has shaken up things quite a bit in Ungeared Guild Wars. A lot of people use him on defense, And he is so random. His defense teams can stop 10 attackers. It could stop one attacker. It could stop no one. Because the RNG is so involved with Bon, it can be very frustrating when you're trying to get through him. Teams you think might be a good matchup might get wiped with a couple Bon swipe cards. Teams that you think are horrible matchups can somehow luck into getting through him, you know? So Bon always seems to have a defense team centered around him, and he seems to be the cornerstone of a lot of defenses in Guild Wars, at least Ungeared Guild Wars recently. So I'm putting Bon number 7 on the list. Novage, what do you think about that?
I think actually we 1, 2, 3. Is it a little bit higher than 7 or no? Yeah. So with Bon, my challenge when I'm facing him is you're right. It is RNG. If you're trying to build your ult and then he just gets the right set of cards on turn 2 or 3, and you have all these orbs on your units, and then he does his area damage attack card and you detonate per orb on there, you're just gonna take out your team if you don't play it right. But then there's other times that you get good RNG and they don't get any good cards, and you're able to take it out, and you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I don't see what the whole Bond issue is. But then you run off a couple other teams like that, and you kind of understand it is kind of like a roll of the dice. But he's a great unit. He definitely probably scares off some people to attempt to go after you or not, especially because his team is probably very HP based team. So therefore the CC is going to be really high. So some people probably won't try to go after you.
What do you think about him, Sandy? Should he have been higher, lower? 7 right where he should be?
Honestly, regardless of where he is on the list, he's just annoying to face. Again, it's just like a roll of the dice, like whether they have good RNG, what the AI is going to do. But any Bond team is, again, that high HP team. So it's going to take you a little bit to kind of wear them down. And you got to decide, who you're going to be aiming for, whether that be that Red Arthur or you're going to take out Tweegod. Just because, again, Bond is dependent on HP for his attack. And, without the support units, he's pretty useless, but getting rid of them is just is a feat in itself. So, yeah, 7, I think so, just because I haven't really seen anybody use him on attack. He's more of a defense, just because you can, stack on top of the HP. You got all the other buffs as well.
Some guilds do use Bond quite a bit on attack as well, but again, you run into the issue with the RNG side of things. Okay, next on the list, and this one someone's already mentioned in Twitch chat. We probably could use a lot more of him because he can slot into a lot of different teams, and that's Keo. Keo is one of those units that you wish you had more of. The fact that he automatically debuffs the opponent's team every turn is amazing for enabling things like weak point cards. Green Monspeed, for instance, is a character that does really well with that. But also there's other units too, because Ignite's not only does it enable weak point cards, but it also just enables raw damage, and his passive also helps mitigate damage the more ignites that are on the other team. So not only do you have to try and deal with all these ignites on you by cleansing them off or whatever, there's the threat that you're going to keep getting more and more every turn. So it's something you constantly have to deal with. And Keo is the centerpiece of a lot of attack teams, which typically have either Green Monspeed or Red Estarossa, or he slots in really well in the Bond team as well. And like I said, he pretty much goes well anywhere, which is why I gave him a higher spot on the list. One of the reasons I didn't put him even higher than this is because once you kill the Keo, and usually he's the primary target, those teams generally start to fall to pieces because Monspeed and Red Estarossa, they like having those ignites for their weak point and their passive cards. So, Novage, what do you think about Keo?
Great unit. I'm glad he's on the list. Probably a good spot for him. I think I agree with you. His weakness is once you take him out, the team falls apart. He's so you can use him in so many different options. He's a fun unit. He's one of my favorite.
How about you, Sandy? You like Kyo?
Love Kyo. I wish they would bring back the Kingdom Fighter, what's it called? Event versus, in the talks that Slime is coming back, because I need more dupes of Kyo. He's just OP, not only for Guild Wars, but, PvP. He's just a fun unit overall when you're using all those ignites. And yeah, he does have his weakness, but I think number 6, very, very good. That's where he belongs.
Kingdom of Fighters collab has a lot of good units for Guild Wars. Maybe they may not all be on this list, but it was a very strong collab for this. All right, so we're moving on to number 5, Ludociel. Now, Ludociel is very powerful because he enables some other units on this list. Baby Merlin, Sariel, pretty much anyone who relies on crit damage. You put Ludociel on that team, they're going to do a lot more of it, and they're going to crit a lot more reliably as well. And the fact that he doesn't require a card to do this, to get this passive go off, it makes it even more powerful. One problem with having buffs on Guild War defense teams, or even attack side teams, but you wouldn't use Ludociel on attack, and we'll get to why in a minute, is that it needs an extra card, and you got to hope that card is there when your units attack, and you can't always rely on the AI to save their attacks for turns where you've got buffs. So having Ludociel pretty much debuffing the other team, for at least the first couple of turns, is a very, very powerful tool. Not to mention, he does a lot of damage himself. The one big downside of Ludociel is that you do need to have him fairly well invested in to make sure you're out CCing the opponent's team. But one of the advantages of putting him on defense is defense teams get association units, where attacking teams aren't allowed association units. So that gives you an extra boost to CC that the attacking team doesn't have. So you're more likely to out CC the other team with your Ludociel, even if he isn't maxed and 6/6'd. I started using Ludociel when I had mine 2/6. I've pulled more since then, but he always had no problem out CCing the other team because of those associates. So Ludociel, Sandy, number 5. What do you think?
Yeah, he's pretty OP. I think that's a great place to put him. Again, the defense, like you said, well invested in, also the association, but then you've got the buffs on top of that. So it's just guaranteed. Especially when you see him on teams, with the Baby Merlin, with the Sariel, even a Tarmiel, like you then have that 30 seconds to kind of be like, who am I going to go after? Like, who should I take off the field first? So having him there, it's a bit scary,
He's always a threat, especially how he amplifies the other characters. Novage, I don't know. Should I put him above Kyo, or is he a little too high? What do you think?
No, I think he's in a good spot, top 5. He's definitely helps that first turn for your defense team. Again, I guess that's why the Angels team is so strong when they're together. Sariel's passive, increasing the goddess's stats, and then you have Tarmiel's lowering their HP based off his defense. Then you have Ludo lowering their resistance to crit and whatnot for that first turn. Just that combo. It just almost ensures that you're going to take someone down. And then you're right, putting them on defense, association, and buffs. You're able to kind of high chances of you outseeing an attacking team, so they'll all get that passive placed on them. It's a good spot for top 5.
I guess maybe reserve your judgment until you see the top 4. Number 4 is the one Escanor. A lot of people might have thought I would put him higher, but we do have some other units on this list still. Now, the one is Big Daddy damage. He can be used on defense as well as offense very effectively. A lot of these units, you've probably already heard us say, okay, they're good on defense, they're good on offense. Well, T1 is pretty much good anywhere, which is why I put him at number 4 on the list. Novage, worthy of just missing the podium?
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious to see what's in the top 3, but great unit. There's so many times where he's like the last man standing, but with his lifesteal, his strong cards, and his his passive as each turn goes on, he's been able to survive and take out teams by himself. I mean, there's definitely some counters that, he could die in first turn. I know that's happened to me, and I was kind of shocked. And it's just how just knowing what team is his weakness. But even if you're fighting him on defense, he's also a pain. So great unit, obviously, to put him to definitely have him in on your attack roster or your defense roster.
So Sausage Party T1, Sandy.
Oh, yes. I was hoping that Daddy Escanor would be hired. He'd be number one for me. But yeah, I mean, his lifesteal and then that flood card, especially if you got that merger, he can just take units down, He can basically one-man team by himself. I guess that's why you call him T1. One man against them all. Honestly, I think that both positions where you put him, defense or offense, he's just really great to be utilized. And hopefully, a lot of us free to play or people who pay to play, you guys would have a T1 in your box. And then just having him 1/6, he's still OP. Definitely a good character for ungeared or geared Guild Wars.
100%. That's why I put him there. And now let's see who I put at number 3. Red Melascula. This might surprise a lot of people that don't have experience in Guild Wars, but Melascula is, in my opinion, one of the strongest units, mostly because she has death protection. And you put her on attack with your team, and a lot of the times, because you're going to such a strong defensive opponent, like we mentioned before, they've got buffs as well, association units. Melascula makes it so that instead of dying on turn 1, whoever gets drained down first and potentially dies gets death protection for many turns. And the AI, as smart as they are, will keep attacking that unit with 1 HP, and she enables you to have a lot of free reign with your other units. She's been used very effectively historically with Assault Mode Meliodas, giving him free reign to do his Assault Meliodas things for many turns, as well as Philosophy Meliodas. A little bit before Assault Meliodas came out, Red Melascula was paired with Philosophy Meliodas very effectively too. So Melascula makes it so that you go in, hey, you might not lose that T1 on turn 1 like Novage sometimes did apparently in the past. So Novage, I don't know. Red Melascula, kind of a strange pick, but is she deserving of being third place here?
Yes, because of the fact that it does happen, right? As you just mentioned, it's happened once, and I was very surprised that my T1 went down in the first round. I was obviously just, being overconfident in the ability of T1. So there are other units that go down first turn, and running in there with Melascula, she definitely is such a strong unit on attack. And I agree with you. Top 3 definitely is someone that you should bring to her. I know she's in my attacking team, so I don't disagree. Good.
How about you, Sandy? You like seeing those big daddy damage healers up in the top 3, or do you think Red Melascula is a good spot?
Oh my gosh, you caught me by surprise. And you know what? I think that it's super, super knowledgeable information that we're sharing for those who will be participating in the beta version. Red Melascula, she's just like the Harley Quinn of the Suicide Squad. Having her, not only is her passive great, but also if on geared, if you have attack defense on her, she can pretty much that inhale. And then also, the ignite or her single target card that can wipe you depending on how many orbs you've got, on you. So, wow, I'm surprised, but very, very good.
She can be the difference on a lot of teams when you're attacking on having a broken team turn 1 and coming out of that matchup with a full squad, right? And that is a very powerful thing to have, that death protection. And maybe that's a little bit of a preview for a future unit here too, because death protection is extraordinarily powerful. But next on the list we're going to be talking about is someone who Melaska is often paired with, and that's Assault Mode Meliodas. And Assault Mode Meliodas kind of broke Guild Wars for a couple of seasons because he was just so strong. He could essentially go through and wipe 5 consecutive defenses without a problem if you had the right RNG fall into place. Now, one of the nice things about Assault Mode Meliodas is he's an amazing attack unit. He's a horrible defense unit, but he's an amazing attack unit because the defense is a bot, and they have no idea how to play around Assault Mode Meliodas' passive. So they're going to be attacking you, and they're going to be getting debuffed, you're going to be getting buffed, and you're going to be doing exactly what Assault Mode Meliodas wants to be doing. And that's wiping teams with crazy buffs and debuffs. So Sandy, should he be number 1 maybe?
I'm really excited to see who you have as number 1. Yeah, Assault Meliodas, he's just like the T1. Like him and T1 are on par for me, that they can single-handedly, even if they're the last one on the field, still, go through other teams, If you're looking for that great RNG, whether that's the gold flood card from T1 or that gold AoE, from Assault Meliodas, he is really OP, and he's super fun to play with. He definitely belongs on attack, like you said, Daz. Definitely belongs in top 2. Yeah.
Novage, how about you? What do you think?
Definitely top 2. I probably would have put him at 1 because of what you said. He literally just steamrolls through teams a lot easier than the T1 team. And pairing him with Molascula, and it's just the commandment or demon on the team kind of buffs him as well. So it kind of guarantees that he's not going to get wiped on the first turn. You're right. The AI doesn't know how to play around him. So therefore you just keep getting these buffs. You have draw on the team, you get more buffs. His Amplify card just destroys people. Then his area, they're all debuffed, and then you use your area card, and boom, you're on to the next team. So I would have put him at 1, but now I'm very curious on who you have number 1. And maybe you're going to surprise us.
No, probably not a lot of surprises for other people too, but Goddess Liz, if you were paying attention to the list and you realized Goddess Liz wasn't on the list, I put her at number 1. And she's like Red Molascula, but kind of on steroids. Not only does she have the death protection, which re-reses someone, so you get that, first per turn or even later turn death protection if you hit too hard. She has a shield to mitigate damage. Her ultimate will win you games on its own. Not to mention not only does it heal you up, but it also, like the AI is not going to play around it. So they're going to attack into you with all they got and potentially kill themselves. And you just sit back and you can literally hit the auto button sometimes after you get Goddess Liz's ult. She also has a stun card too, which can't be overstated enough how important CC can be against an enemy team. If you got to control an enemy's ult, it comes in really handy. Goddess Liz turns other units, like a T1 team, into an unstoppable force. You toss T1, you toss Goddess Liz, Green Gother, and just any other unit together, and you've got a force to be reckoned with. Goddess Liz is also a beast on defense as well, which is one reason I'd put her above, say, Red Molascula, if the other reasons weren't enough already. She can make those defense teams even harder to crack, because anytime a new attack team comes in against a Goddess Liz squad, you got to get through that passive again. So you can't just hope to kill one unit and be like, hey, well, the next guy coming in, they can kill the next unit and like slowly we can whittle away a team. You got to kill a unit twice to get through that, that one unit on defense. And it can be frustrating as hell, which is why I put Goddess Liz as the broken spot in number 1. Sandy, deserving.
Yes, I completely forgot about OP Goddess Liz, because you know what? She's useful in both offense and defense. And you're right. She's just annoying.
She is.
Definitely deserving annoying spot number 1. Definitely a character that you want to bring into any type of Guild Wars, any type of team.
One character that I just kind of realized as going through his list I probably should have included on there, because he has made Salt Meliodas even stronger is Sigurd. I don't know where I'd pop him on this list, but Sigurd's definitely like a notable mention. As being one that I forgot to put on here. One nice thing about Sigurd is you toss him in with the Salt Meliodas on attack, and you're not going first, so the other team's going to attack you. They're going to get debuffed, which triggers Sigurd's passive, so everyone on your team's going to get 3 attack buffs. Then you can extort them. Salt Meliodas can go ham. Sigurd can go ham. Sigurd, Salt Meliodas, Melascula, and Blue Droll is typically the combination, which is probably the strongest attacking team. And he's kind of a bit of a cornerstone there. Of course, you don't need him, but he does make the team a lot stronger. Because we're almost done the show. Let's go with the featured comment. Sandy, you want to take us through that?
Absolutely. So every episode, we try to do a feature comment wherever you guys leave those comments for us, whether that be on Discord, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, again, wherever you find us. Usually our comments this week is also coming from YouTube, and I apologize if I butcher your name. Tranquilius. Tranquilly said on the last episode, for the second question, wasn't Novage supposed to get the point? LOL. You know what, Tranquilius? He's not here to defend himself. Episode's already aired, but so I win a game by default. But technically, hey, Novage, if you're going to rewatch this episode, next time you probably should catch it.
Yeah, it's his own fault for not contesting the point. Again, we're human, we make mistakes, but it is kind of funny. But you know what? I think we ended up giving the tie there, so it is what it is. Okay, and on that note, I think we're going to end it off the show just as Novage slides back in. Thank you all today for joining us today, the Boar Hat Tavern Podcast, a Seven Deadly Sins Grand Cross podcast. We stream this show live on Twitch whenever we happen to air it. Again, our schedule's been a little erratic, but we're working on it. Twitch.tv/Boar Hat Tavern. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email us anytime at podcast@boarhattavern.com or follow us on Instagram or Twitter at @boarhattavern. All 3 of us are members of the Global Guild Denied. It's part of the Scoundrels Alliance. If you'd like to join our ranks, you can pop over to our Discord server. The link is going to be in the description. I gave a shout out to another community Discord server earlier in the show, and I'm going to do it again. Giving a shout out to Larry and Asami and anyone involved in setting up their new 7DS community Discord server. It really is a great project they're spearheading, and it's going to help a lot of people find the guild that best suits their needs. So if you're looking for a new guild or you just want to hang out in their community, which is a good one too, check out their Discord link in the description. You can also subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you happen to find your podcasts online. We're likely there. You can also find our shows on our website at boarhattavern.com, and it's kind of hard to say that without laughing. We'd like to thank Madeline Marois for crafting our killer logo, Streetwise Rhapsody from YouTube for composing our awesome cover of the Grand Cross theme song that we use in our intro, and Andre Bobet from ArtStation for letting us use his outstanding 3D renders of the Boar Hat Tavern for the pre-live and post-video splash screens. You find all of their work at their websites in the description. But everybody, thanks for listening. Have a great week.
Bye. Bye, Novage.